Right. So I want to welcome everyone who's on the call this evening. And thank you for taking the time to be here. And this evening, we're going to be speaking about health. And we're going to be speaking about health from a different perspective, um, perhaps a paradigm shift in thinking about our health. And it's what I believe is a more correct perspective on health that I'll be sharing with you. And for those who are not familiar with me, my name is David Homer, and I'm a naturopathic doctor. I have been in clinical practice of naturopathic medicine for 25 years. I have retired from clinical practice now, 4 years ago, and now I deal with health and wellness from a different perspective. Some of that will come out this evening in the approach that I have, the approach I'm taking now. But as we speak about health and wellness tonight, I um, want to ask you to just open your minds. Perhaps if you can, put aside what we have been accustomed to in thinking about health. And I promise you that as we go through, the information that you're going to get will help us to be able to navigate our way through not just health and wellness, but through life more effectively. So I am going to get ready to share my screen now, and we're going to begin the presentation. So the aim of the presentation is to come to a place where we can unlock our human potential. And the potential for what? The potential to live our very best life, or the potential to live an extraordinary life. And we're going to do that through mind body wellness. So, mind body wellness is going to be the focus of where we're going. And to bring us to a place where we can feel better, where we can think better, and ultimately so we can live better in every area and on every level of life. Now, the perspective that I'm going to be presenting to you regarding health is in the context of looking at the world that we live in today. And we live in a world where it's becoming more uncertain. The future is more uncertain. There are more challenges that we're facing in the world economically, socially, relationally, and otherwise. And there's a lot of conversations today about how difficult and uncertain life is becoming. And we see it all across the news. And when it comes to the aspect of health, we're also seeing increasing percentages in lifestyle diseases. And we're seeing a resurgence even in infectious diseases. Excuse me. And people look around the world today and they're saying that we're living in very challenging times. The perspective of health that I want to present this evening is that all that we are seeing that's going on in the world are not different, isolated incidences that humanity is dealing with, but they're all different expressions of the same thing, of which health and the increasing and escalating percentages of diseases is just a prevalent expression of it that takes the stage. But whether it be the increasing percentages of disease or whether it is the moral decline in society, or whether it is the social unrest, geopolitical conflicts, all that we're seeing as going on in creating very uncertain times for us, they're all aspects of one thing. And I say that to highlight this, that if we can effectively deal with what we call health, we can effectively deal with all of these other aspects as well. And that is the perspective that I want to present to you, so that by improving our lives in the context of health, if we all were to do this, we would be actually improving society and by extension, improving the world that we live in. And so that's where I'm going to go. And I'm going to begin by a model that I like to use that gives a contextual understanding that brings us to the point of mind-body wellness and why that is so relevant and critical to the whole process. And so let me begin with the model. And the quote that you see at the top, nothing is more important in life than our personal alignment of wholeness, is central. That is key because our entire quality of life depends on this. You see, when it comes to unlocking our true potential, which we're going to get to, and just bear with me over the next 5 minutes or so as I lay the context for this, is that our true potential really resides in our natural design of wholeness. All of us, our inherent and natural design is to be whole, is to be complete in our three dimensions of spirit, soul, and body, or spirit, mind, and body. Now, when we say whole and say wholeness, we're talking about all things being in order. Nothing is lacking, nothing is missing. Everything is unified. Everything is in seamless order. When we can live from a perspective where our physical, mental, and spiritual aspects of our life functions in harmonious union as one, the natural course of life, the natural outflow and outcome of life is a life of health, prosperity, and abundance. Because when we do that, and I don't want to get off track, but there is a natural flow to the creative order of life that's governed by principles. And once we live by our true essence of being, where our potential really resides, which is our spiritual nature, or I like to call it our divine nature, once we live by the qualities of that, and that aligns with the principles that govern how life works, the natural flow of life takes us in a direction and an unfolding where we live a very free, full, and complete life, where life is beyond our imagination. So tapping our potential and unlocking our potential is really not something we have to strive and put out a lot of effort to try and do. It is an effortless and natural flow that emanates from us from this place of wholeness. Now, what defines this place of wholeness is love. Love it's beyond the human context of understanding love, but just for now, it's love is what defines this state. And once life is calibrated by this, we will naturally flow through life in a way that everything, life works for us and it never works against us. Now, if that is true, there must be a way in which that is true and which it can be shown and it can be experienced. But I'm going to tell you that life only works for us. It never works against us. And that becomes the reality of experience when we can live from this place of wholeness. However, what happens is that we come into this world, and from a very young age, we are taught from young children to engage with life in such a way that starts to invert or reverse the flow of life from being inside out, meaning that life naturally flows from the inside out, from our spiritual essence of being and the qualities of our spiritual nature expressed through our experience. That begins to reverse from a very young age, because the flow of life will continuously bring us into opposites to where we have to keep choosing. And choice becomes the compass that navigates us through life. And we're taught from an early age to choose based on societal norms so that we can fit in, so that we can be accepted. And we're often taught from a very young age, often to choose against what we truly desire. But that sets a stage where, as we grow older, we become acculturated to value life based on external appearances, based on external realities. And it causes us to adopt a different identity, an egocentric identity, as opposed to our true essential nature, which is spiritual. And so our choices contradict the values that maintain the alignment of wholeness. And it creates a conflict between our outer reality, what we experience in life, and our inner reality, the true essence of our being. And there is this conflict that we have between our inner life and our outer life. And I'm speaking that pretty much humanity lives this way. And that brings us to this place where mind-body dissonance happens. Psychology calls it cognitive dissonance. I call it mind-body dissonance. And this is where a disharmony in our state of being arises, and pretty much all of humanity live in this place. And this becomes our new normal from how we may have entered into this world. Once we have gotten to this place and we go through life living in this place, our spiritual identity, our spiritual awareness becomes obscured. And life now is governed by how we have been acculturated. This misalignment, where things shift out of alignment, this misaligned living between what we think and what we say. It's misalignment between what we feel and what we do. And if we check ourselves and we are really self-aware, we'll see how much of our life actually is lived like that. If there was a screen projected above our heads about what we are thinking versus what we are saying and doing, people will see how much of a contrast there is. But we live these very fractured lives because there is a dividing of minds where between our inner and outer life. But once we begin to lose our spiritual awareness, once we lose our spiritual identity, a spiritual disconnected world is one that prioritizes, we create systems that prioritize people over profits. A world that is spiritually disconnected is one that not governed by love, but governed by fear. And once you find a society governed by fear, there's always going to be violence. There's always going to be injustice. There's always going to be things like that. You're talking about we breed, right here is where we breed cultures that we thrive on, and we are fixated on external validation. And that external validation is what breeds things like low self-worth and loneliness and emptiness and so on. But this is where society breaks down. This is where we create the very systems and structures of life out of this way of thinking, living, and being. And this is this is what we need to fix. Because our true essence of being, if we can return to being that, it's not something we have to look for or something we have to try and find. It is our true essence of being. It's something we have to return to rather than something we have to try and discover. And so this is, but because of what happens here, this fractured way of thinking, living, and being, we never make it to the experience of a truly abundant life, and life is always a struggle, and life becomes fractured. And so on one side of the fracture, we have a reduced quality of life, and on the other side, we have a burdensome standard of living. On one side, there's lifestyle diseases, which becomes a norm throughout our lives, and the struggles of life and lacking of abundance, that also becomes the norm. And these are two experiences that humanity go through today. Today's humanity, this is what we live with today, and this is the normal now. And I'm saying is that sickness and disease, or states of health and states of wellness, is not separate from all the other social ills that we face. It's just a prevalent expression of it. And so once we can get this back in order, once we can understand that we are really not victims of disease, we cultivate illness when our inner and outer realities remain misaligned, creating an unstable way of thinking, living, and being. We have a term for it in society. We call it stress. We call it stressful living, negative thinking, and emotions. Health is not the absence of illness, but the presence of wholeness. It's the inseparable union of spirit, mind, and body functioning in a seamless whole as one. This is a state of being that is unfamiliar to the average person, but it is our natural state of being. When wholeness is not mirrored by the spirit's peace, which is what defines it, the mind's freedom, and the body's reflection of this inner harmony, dis-ease and dysfunction naturally will arise. So restoring mind-body harmony is a process of renewing the mind, aligning thoughts, emotions, and actions in resonance with the qualities of our divine nature. And that restores our natural state of wholeness. And what I'm saying is that this is not just how we may be dealing with sickness and disease. This is not just the solution or the pathway of the solution to living a healthy and disease-free life, overcoming illness, and having a good health span of life. It's not just the solution to that, but it's also at the same time is going to be the solution to how we can live more effectively, live more abundantly in every area. We can have better relationships, stronger relationships, more meaningful relationships. We can engage with life in a more effective way on every level once we can get this. But once we remain here, we get caught in this cycle of fractured living that continues to perpetuate itself. And this is how the average person lives today, and the average person dies from a lifestyle disease, spending the last 20 to 30 years nursing it until it takes them down, and we think that that is normal. That's not normal, it's just common. We are designed to live far, far beyond what we think normal is. The World Health Organization calls this condition that's facing humanity the global burden of disease. And because it's so prevalent, it's a global pandemic far greater than the COVID pandemic that was here. COVID pandemic killed 20 million people over 2 years. This kills 50 million people. That's the mortality rate annually. It's a far greater pandemic. But we don't think of anything of it. People are dying by the seconds when it comes to heart disease and cancers. So diabetes, obesity, arthritis, these things that are the number one cause of death on the planet over any other causes, this is what is facing humanity today. And we separate this as though this is as an isolated incident that is separate from our financial struggles and separate from our social struggles and separate from the moral decline of society. But they're all reflections of the very same thing. So what the area that I work with in health now is that it's not about fixing your body, it's fixing your life. So when we learned the principles, the pathway, and the process of how we can now bring our lives back into harmony and balance and wholeness, what we find is not only our bodies begin to work better, but our lives begin to work better. And that is the approach that we're looking at. So I have a quote here that society does not operate independently of the individuals who comprise it or who compose it. If we live in a state of misalignment, then the cultures and institutions we create will reflect that same dissonance. And that's the world we're in. And so people are concerned, they're concerned about the uncertainties of life, and when it comes to their health, they're looking at that as though it's separate. I'm saying if we want to influence our lives, our families, our communities, and the world around us, we got to return to what healthy living is. And health, with the understanding that healthy living is not about just about our bodies, it's about our life. And so when we approach it from this holistic perspective, we are going to see far greater change than we've ever seen at any time with the approach that currently exists in what we call the healthcare system. Just think about it. If the approach of the healthcare system is correct, after 200 years, should we not be seeing better results than we see today in the healthcare system, as opposed to increasing disease percentages? Last year, it was $4 trillion of a healthcare cost in dealing with lifestyle disease. They say from 2025, it's going to shoot to 7 trillion. We're living longer, but we're living longer with diseases and more types of disease, more and more mental illnesses, and at younger and younger ages. It's a pandemic that is spreading, but at the same time, as this gets worse, guess what we are seeing? More social unrest, social polarizations, global conflict. It's all part of the same issue. And that's the point that I really wanted to get across. So disease is not something that happens to us. It is something that happens through us. It happens, we're not a victim of disease. We cultivate it by the way we think, live, and are because of how we've been acculturated. But when we come into the knowledge and the understanding, and we have the principles and the tools that we can use, we can change not just how our bodies are expressed in the imbalances, we can now change how we deal with life on every level. And so the condition of our body is determined by the spiritual essence that animates it. The very thing that gives it life and movement is the very essence that determines its condition. And when we can return to aligning the qualities of our spiritual nature with the principles that govern how life works, and we put that together, we're going to see not just a change in physicality, but a change in mentality and a change in spirituality. When we realize that health is a byproduct of our alignment with divine order, we can move from victimhood to mastery over our well-being. And that's where we want to go. So the key to mind-body balance lies in neurology. Why neurology? Because neurology, which is the science of the brain and the nervous system, is what provides communication between the mind and the body. And so that is where we're going. Neurology is the hardware, it is the system that we have that brings mind-body communication. And so mind and body, they converge together in neurology. And that's important for us to understand, because when things are out of balance, it means neurology are out of balance. When mind and body is out of balance. When neurology is in balance, it means mind and body is in balance. And that's a simple equation. But the brain and the central nervous system is the control center that processes the activity of the mind and transmits its life-sustaining instructions to the body. So I want us to understand is that the mind, which takes its instructions from the very intelligence that built and runs the body, the mind takes the instructions from that blueprint that's embedded in DNA, and it transmits it to the body via the mind. So we have inbuilt instructions. Let's call it pre-installed DNA programs. We'll call it the operating system. It is the blueprint of subconscious instructions that automatically direct and sustain optimal biological and psychological functions. So, built in to the human design is a blueprint, and we're not consciously involved in it. It's all subconscious. It's all happening automatically. Built in to the human design is a blueprint of instructions that automatically direct and sustain optimal biological and psychological functions. It's pre-installed programs and it runs our system, and it came and it developed as we developed in the room to the adults that we are today. 24/7, it never stops streaming those instructions directly into the body. And so right now we have trillions of cells performing thousands of functions every second. We have organ systems that are collaborating in unison. We are breathing, we are thinking, our heart is beating, and we are not consciously involved because it's all being run by these subconscious instructions that automatically direct and sustain it all. That's pre-installed. We're not involved in that. That is unique to every individual. The other thing that we have that helps to create this experience of life is what we call acquired lifestyle programs, and I call this the software. These are programs that are installed through the experiences of life. These are conditioned patterns of subconscious thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and lifestyle habits that automatically shape our life experience. So from a very young age, as we are being enculturated, as we are being guided, and we learn and we are conformed to a society where our thoughts, emotions, our beliefs, and our perceptions of life are shaped in such a way that it creates our experiences of life, and it is also automatic, meaning that these are also subconsciously programmed in our minds. They're programmed in our subconscious mind. So that's why we respond to life without thinking about it. Somebody says something that we don't like and we may get offended. We don't consciously make a decision to be offended. We just reflexively become offended. We find ourselves in traffic and we're getting perturbed, and it all just emanates from us subconsciously. So our experiences of life, how we are thinking, nobody has ever taught us how to think. We just think. Nobody ever taught us how to feel. We just feel, because they just become subconsciously programmed through the experiences of life. Now, these acquired lifestyle programs will either run in concert with our pre-installed DNA programs, and if they run in concert with them and they're compatible with them, then we have balance. Now, the science of psychoneuroimmunology, epigenetics, and quantum biology tells us that the pre-installed programs that's running our systems in this original program is based on balance, harmony, integration, unity, oneness. It's based on the expressions of love, peace, joy, harmony, gratitude. And so the science shows us that when we exhibit these emotions, our immune system is at its highest, our digestive system is at its best, our cardiovascular system is at its strongest, and the science shows that with positive emotions, our biological systems run at their best. In fact, there's science and there's documented evidence all across the world that shows that when we get into high states of positive emotions, like deep heartfelt gratitude and compassion and love, the immune system can upregulate to at least 1,000%, where blindness goes away and eyesight comes back. Tumors disappear. It's called spontaneous healing. So when you do measurements, neural measurements of people who go through spontaneous healing, they find that their systems optimize to such a level that people can get out of a wheelchair that have had arthritis, crippling arthritis, and their joints come back in order. Cartilage is rebuilt. And it all happens without external intervention. And I'm saying that to highlight this. When we talk about optimal function, that's optimal function. What we think is optimal is the new normal of deficiency that we have become accustomed to, but it's far from what is optimal when everything is in balance. When everything is in balance, there is no sickness, there is no disease, and in fact, our capacity to function, our potential that becomes unlocked is so far greater than we can imagine and that we could even talk about right now. However, as we go through life and these acquired lifestyle programs that become subconsciously encoded into our subconscious mind, they could either work with and enhance and be compatible with the pre-installed programs, or they could be conflicting with them. And what happens is that we learn to live in such a way where they become in conflict with them. So the science also shows us that instead of love-based emotions, we have fear-based emotions. When there is anxiety, when there is frustration, when there is any type of negative type of emotions, it shows how the immune system becomes weaker, cardiovascular system becomes, circulation slows down, inflammation increases. All the things that lead to disease, it happens when the subconscious programming becomes affected by a contrary frequency. Instead of positivity, there's negativity. So that a lifestyle that is dominated by chronic stress, negative subconscious patterns, suppressed trauma, and unhealthy habits disrupts the coherent flow of mind-body communication, impeding clear neural instructions, compromising biological function and mental resilience. And this is the root, this is the foundation, this is the soil where disease grows from. And this is all scientifically validated. So when we hear things like stress is the #1 cause of lifestyle disease, we hear that and it is said in the medical circles, but nobody defines it out for us. But this is the way how we have been acculturated, and this is where the fracture is. This is where mind-body dissonance that we talked about earlier, this is where it is. And it happens because that dissonance, as I showed you in the earlier model, the instructions that are 24/7 never stop streaming from mind to body. The instructions are streaming to keep our bodies optimal, but it's processed by the brain and the nervous system. This is neurology. The brain processes the instructions and relays it to the body. It's becoming interrupted. And so at the root of all lifestyle diseases and even autoimmune diseases is the instructions, the pre-installed programs that runs a perfect biology. Those instructions are not becoming clearly communicated to the body because they're being disrupted by contrary programs that are creating that disruption. But when mind-body harmony restores in its natural state of balance, the intelligence that runs and maintains the inherent balance of the body, it naturally optimizes physical and mental functions, and it prevents the development of disease. What I've just laid out here for us is the pathway to how we get there and also the solution of how we can get back. But what we have to work with currently is a model of healthcare that perpetuates the thinking that we are victims of disease. And so the solutions come from external. And so we are not taught to think about fixing our style of living, even though we call it lifestyle diseases. We never go to fixing the style of how we live. We go to taking external remedies of various types, which are good, it's needed, and it can save our lives, but it will never restore the balance. So keeping it broad, it's not just, all it does is helps us to manage conditions. It helps us with relief, it helps us with control, but we never, when it comes to lifestyle diseases, the vast majority, we never overcome it. We just learn how to manage it and control it and live with it. And as time goes by, it spirals down. But when we see signs of mind-body imbalances, poor sleep, low energy, aches and pains, a weak immune system, inflammation. When these signs, these are not negative signs. These are not bad things. These are messages. Our entire makeup, our entire human design is designed for one thing. It's built one way, to maintain balance all the time. So when there's poor sleep or low energy, or there's aches and pains, these are signals that the body is sending us that there is imbalance. But we are taught to think of it as a negative because we are victims, and so we look to shut it down rather than understand that our body is signaling us, pay attention, something is out of balance. And so we have not been taught to think of, what do I need to correct in how I'm living, how I'm thinking, how I'm dealing with life. We're looking for, what do I need to take out of a bottle in order to fix it. And so it perpetuates this cycle where we're not seeing disease get any better, nor are we seeing the world and all around us getting any better. But it starts with you, it starts with me, where we have to understand that these signs and symptoms, don't take them as a negative, take them as it is our body speaking to us in a very positive way, alerting us that there is imbalance that needs addressing. And we just need to understand now this new model, this new paradigm, and how we address it. On the other side of that too, when we express negative emotions, when we have fearful or we're angry and there is unforgiveness, and when there's any unpleasant emotions that we feel, that is also the same thing. Our mind is giving us a signal that there is mind-body dissonance. Because when it's in balance, only one thing happens. When mind and body is in balance, is that there's peacefulness, there's joy, there is compassion, there's love. Life is beautiful. You love the life you live and you live the life you love, and there's never a bad day. Everything is great because you understand the principles of how life works. And so when we start to find ourselves feeling out of sorts and feeling negative, it's another sign for us to step back and take a look that we need to shift how we're thinking, how we're living. So what we call negative emotions and what we call these signs of illness, or these signs of malaise that lead to illness, they're all signs of just mind-body imbalances. And once we understand this new approach, we can deal with it. But the dealing with it is dealing with the mind-body balance. If we continue this way, we will just be dealing with contraindications, side effects, and all the other issues that come along with it that just perpetuate the problem and oftentimes make them get worse. So we are at a place where the world needs a new approach when it comes to health, with the understanding that the approach to health is also the solution to improving not just our lives, but for improving society at large, because it's the same imbalance that's affecting our whole world. And the solution is restoring the clear flow of instructions from mind to body that is naturally there. And bridging optimal physical and mental function, which unlock our divine potential to begin emanating. The spiritual qualities, the divine nature, we don't have to find that, we possess it. It is inherently who we are. But when mind and body, the more it comes into balance, the more it comes into harmony, the more it becomes a streamline, the more that potential of our inherent nature just starts naturally emanating. And that's why people who practice consistently the practices of meditation, metacognitive exercises, mindfulness, and so on, they start to experience those changes in their lives because it's streamlining the instructions from mind to body more seamlessly. So people who engage in the consistent practice of meditation, which to me, I say to anybody, is the single greatest habit anybody should develop, is to learn how to meditate. Because when you do that, you harness that mind-body connection and you start to see not just improvements in your body in ways that are astounding, but you also begin to interact with life and people in a very different way. You're doing the same. But many people find it difficult to engage in some of these metacognitive type exercises and stay consistent long enough. So in this new approach and in my work, I came across a gentleman who understood this type of solution. And I heard his story that his mother, who suffered with a neurodegenerative condition called multiple sclerosis, and he set out on a journey to try to find a solution. Multi-millionaire before he was 30, an engineer, a software engineer, and going around the world to seek the best of treatments, only to learn that there is no cure for it because and he learned from the neuroscientists that for reasons that are unknown, the signal is not getting from the brain to the muscles. So there is that gradual degeneration that just gets worse as time goes by. She was supposed to pass away a long time ago. She's still alive today because he discovered a solution in his. So his research led him to in asking the questions as to why is the signal not getting from the brain to the muscles. And so that led him on years of neuroscience research that brought him to a discovery of how we can harness this mind-body balance. It is the simplest and one of the greatest things that I've come across in my 25, 30 years within the healthcare industry. I've never seen anything so simple, yet so profoundly effective and powerful in helping us to harness this mind-body balance. And what does that mean? It doesn't just mean better physical and optimal physical function. It also means better mental function. And what does that translate into? We can now cross this bridge of transformation where we can now live a much better life. So it's not just feeling better and thinking better, it's now living better. This gentleman, his name is Jay Dhaliwal. He's the CEO and founder of a company called the Super Patch Company. And when he made this statement, I am here to build something generational that will transform the world. When I first heard that, it resonated with me because I felt that part of my calling was to do something to impact humanity that will end up changing the world until I realized a few years ago that it was not my job to change the world. My job was to become the best me that I could be. And by doing that, I could influence those around me in becoming their best selves. And with one life at a time, that world could change. But this statement resonated with me. And so when I understood that he was merging state-of-the-art science with a holistic approach that involved naturally harnessing and optimizing mind-body connection, he had my full attention of what he was doing, because this has been my evolving work up until several months ago when I got introduced to this individual. And the approach that he has is so simple. It is a wearable technology that is as simple as putting on a pair of spectacles. When our eyes begin to lose clarity and our vision becomes impaired, something as simple as wearing a pair of spectacles brings our vision from being blurred to being clear in an instant. No medicines, no injections, nothing invasive at all. Just simply put on spectacles and can see clearly again. In a very similar way, he came up with a wearable technology that when our brain's neural programs become disrupted, by simply applying a super patch, a non-invasive device to your skin, the brain instantly begins to improve its neural functions, which does two things. The body starts to optimize in its function, and the mind starts becoming more orderly in its function. And it starts to happen in an instant. Well, I have never heard something like that, and that got my attention. I'm going to show you a 2.5 minute video of him showing the effectiveness or the efficacy of how the patches work, and then I'm going to explain to you the simplicity of how it works and what that means for our lives.
Hi everyone, I'm Jay Dhaliwal. I'm the CEO and founder of Vox Life and the creator of Vox Life HPT. Today, I want to talk to you about a Harmony Neuro Patch. And what this product does is actually stimulates receptors on our skin, sending a neurosignal to our brain to help it reach homeostasis. This is the only product in the world that relies on the neurohaptic system that every single one of us has to optimize our neurology and optimize our health. Today, with the help of Dr. Mark DeBrincat, our VP of Clinical Strategy, we're going to be using an FDA-cleared 19-channel EEG headset, as well as FDA-cleared software to visualize, record, and show the impact that our technology has on our neurology and our brains to help it reach optimal performance. What we want to show today is how the Harmony Neuro Patch helps that dysregulated yellow, blue, and red colors in the brain maps transform into that healthy green homeostasis neurology that is the foundation of health and wellness. So what we're looking at right now is a neurological QEEG output of Mike's limbic system. The 19 channels are reading over 60,000 brainwaves a second and generating an output of neurofunction and brainwaves. What we want to see now is where that suboptimal red and yellow colors are. We want to see them turning as much as possible to a healthy green with the application of our HPT patch. So we've applied the patch now to Mike's arm, and within 10 seconds, you're seeing that predominant yellow and red become predominantly green. Just for clarification, ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing in the world that has this output at this rate of speed without drugs, without chemicals, without electricity. That's the power of Vox HPT. So when we see a healthy green neurology, what we're looking at is a brain and a mind in homeostasis. It is operating in its optimal function. And this is so important. And this is why it's so important. So Vox Life HPT, as we demonstrated with our neuro patch, helps the central nervous system reach homeostasis in our neurology. And the reason this is so important for overall wellness and health is that neurology is the top of the pyramid of our physiological health and wellness paradigm. First is neurology at the very top, then there's chemistry, then there's biology, then there's physics and mechanics. Neurology will have an impact all the way through our entire physiology. Healthy neurology, healthy body, better wellness. PT.
Let me just take a minute to just explain what you just saw there. When he says they're measuring 60,000 brainwaves a second, brainwaves are a reflection of the mind's activity. And what you saw in the experiment is that the brain went into what he said, homeostasis. And that is basically going from incoherent or an erratic way of functioning where the brain waves are not properly synchronized to becoming more synchronized and more orderly in their function. What that essentially means is that when the brain waves become synchronized and more orderly function, the instructions that naturally flow from mind processed by brain through body becomes much clearer. And so it's pretty much like a radio wave that's transmitted and is being picked up with a receiver, and whether it's clear or not, you can get a very clear sound on the other side, or you can get a disturbance, and so you're getting a lot of static. In a very similar way, it's like that. But the static that helps to disrupt the signal of the information being transmitted to the body is because of the negative inputs from our thought patterns, emotions, etc. And so most of us, our minds and our brains are in that state of erratic functioning because our lives are not governed or calibrated by inner peace and tranquility. So, I mean, if you were to just look at that chart on the screen, most people live, and if you were to just do the research, but just take my word for it, most people live in beta and high beta level waves because we live in, and most of us, 70% of us are in high beta, which is in a stressful position. But our natural state is to be fully alert, but live in more alpha and theta levels. Now, alpha and theta levels where you are more relaxed, where you're in more of a meditative, more of a subconscious, but yet fully alert. That's where we're supposed to be. But most people don't know how to live at that level. We have to train our minds through years of meditation to do that. But in applying the patch, it brings that homeostasis or that coherence, and it happens in a matter of seconds, where it brings the brain, which is measuring the activity of the mind, into balance, and you begin to see immediate changes. Now, the technology, which is based on Nobel Prize research, it is the first aspect of it goes back to 1939, and I'm just putting this information for your reference that you can research if you wanted to do that. Is based on the fact that all atoms, whether in the human body or whether in physical matter, consistently emit and receive electromagnetic waves that can be detected and measured. Why is that important? That is important because something that maybe the average person may not be aware of is that we live in an ocean of vibrational frequencies. All around us right now, there are light frequencies, there are sound frequencies, there are waves of the various frequencies that's all around us. We can't detect it, we don't know it, but we live in a motion. Just the devices that we may hold in our hands, all matter, all atoms in the universe transmit and emit electromagnetic waves. That's important to understand. Now, the average person may not be as familiar with that. Years later, in more recent times, two other Nobel Prize laureates discovered specific receptors embedded in the sensory neurons of the skin called the piezo-ion channels. They convert vibration, texture, and temperature into electrical signals, which are interpreted as information by the nervous system and the brain. Now, that's important because all of our sensory organs, of which our largest sensory organ is the skin, but all of our sensory organs do one thing. It converts vibration, which is all around us, into electrical signals, which is the language of the brain and the nervous system. So we think that our eyes see objects, but our eyes can't see objects. Our eyes only can see light. So the vibrational frequency of light comes into our eyes and goes into our brain as electrical signals, and our brain constructs it into the image that we see. And people may not be aware of that. We can't hear sound. Our ears are designed to detect the vibration that is made, and it converts it as electrical signals, goes to our brain, and we detect sound. All of our sensory organs do one thing, and you can look it up if it is new to you. You can look it up that all of our sensory organs detect the vibration, converts it into electrical signals sent to the brain, and that's how we know what's going on in the world around us. They all convert vibration into information that our brain interprets. So an easy way to understand how these super patches work is this. If you understand how Braille works, Braille are these little raised dots, which I'm sure we're all aware of, that's on a surface. And when blind persons put their fingers on it, each pattern, they're arranged in what they call tactile patterns. Each pattern carries the information of what letter, word, number, or symbol. When a blind person puts their finger on it, the skin detects the vibration of that pattern, sends the signal to the brain, and the person knows if it's a QRS, a word, a symbol, a number, or whatever the case might be. So remember, everything emits a vibration, and everything in the universe receives vibrational signals. But these ion channels in our skin detects the vibrational signature of the patterns, sends it to the brain, and converts the information. The brain converts the information. Super patches work exactly the same way in a very similar way. It's called vibrotactile technology. And what the patches have absolutely no ingredients in them. They're not like many of the other patches that you may find on the market that have substances and ingredients, medicines, whether it's natural or synthetic or otherwise. Those are called transdermal patches. Super patches doesn't work like any of those. It's simply a pattern, and embedded in the pattern is that tactile pattern that has information, that sends a signal to the brain, which the brain interprets the information. What Superpatch has been able to do over years of neuroscience research and development, they have been able to determine that what information is needed to synchronize the brain waves and what pattern will send that information to the brain via the skin. It's as simple, it's just like you can call it Braille for the brain, how Braille that speaks to the brain to synchronize the brain waves. And so after 15 years of clinical research and development, vibrotactile technology has become peer-reviewed, published research, and now it's being published in some of the major medical journals around the world. And it's because of it's never been done before, where you can impact physiological function and mental activity without introducing anything into the body. What you're doing is harnessing what already exists. In terms of our design, what we're doing is harnessing and upregulating and streamlining the very intelligence that runs the system. We're bringing it back clearly online, and it just does what it naturally does. So the patches are not fixing our bodies. The body is designed to heal itself. But what's disrupting its instructions to run optimally, the patches are just synchronizing it so it happens freely. Today, the technology is being, Superpatch is being invited by major global symposiums to introduce this groundbreaking technology to the world, because nothing has ever been done in the healthcare industry where you could impact health and wellness like this. But again, I want to keep it broad. While this is a way to enhance physical well-being and improve our physical health, at the same time, it is bridging that mind-body communication gap that brings us into a place where we can now harness our minds, cultivate it, nurture it to where we can now go through a process of transformation. So it's a wearable technology that unlocks the potential that is inherently within each of us. And so, like Braille, the tactile patterns on each super patch send sensory vibrations as electrical signals to the brain, balancing and synchronizing of neural pathways linked to specific physical and emotional functions. This just naturally amplifies the body's communication, creating optimal performance and well-being, both physically and mentally. Here are 12 ways that the company do it. These are 12 targeted solutions designed to enhance your brain, what your brain and body are meant to do naturally when they're properly coordinated. So these patches, they help to coordinate mind-body interaction with specific synchronization that deals with specific functions of the body. But because mind and body converge in neurology, when you start to balance neurology, you're enhancing both physiology as well as psychology. So these are mind-body solutions that everybody needs. Who needs it? The entire world needs this mind-body solution because of how it impacts our lives, not just our physical well-being. And so they are 100% drug-free. Absolutely no ingredients are in them. They're FDA registered, not FDA approved, because there's nothing to ingest into the body, which is why the only reason you need FDA approval. Enhances physical and mental well-being. It's backed by research and it's proven by science, and it addresses the most common needs in health, wellness, and lifestyle performance. And that's quite broad. They're very effective. They can work within seconds, within minutes, within hours. It all depends on the individual, depends on the condition, age, and various other factors like that. So we don't have to worry about contraindications if you're on various medications. There is no interactions, there are no side effects, there's no allergic responses because there's nothing that it puts into your body. It simply synchronizes your brainwave activity that the instruction can go clear to the body to optimize what naturally supposed to be taking place. So they're non-invasive and completely safe. They're easy to use. You simply patch and live. The great thing about it is that they're safe for children, they're safer and safe for the elderly, and of course, they're surprisingly affordable. So when you talk about a healthy neurology, you're talking not just about an optimal mind-body function, but with continuous use, you're now looking at entering into a realm of disease prevention and decreased degeneration. So what we want to do is we want to keep our neurology as healthy and as optimal as possible. And here is the long game of it. Here is where the real magic is. When we start to apply super patches in the various ways, and it synchronizes brainwave activity, where mind-body communication becomes clear and clean, the brain, through a phenomenon called neuroplasticity, which is how the brain reorganizes itself and rewires itself to the new balance. That happens over time. Just like we lose balance over time and that imbalance becomes our norm, the brain now reorganizes itself to this new normal, which happens with consistent use. And when that, as that happens more and more and becomes more and more hardwired, two things are happening. Our physical function is increasingly enhancing and getting better, and our mental function is increasingly getting better as well. So people who've been using super patches over time and they're consistent with it, they're noticing not just the difference in how their bodies are functioning and overcoming whatever issues they may be dealing with, but they're noticing that their temperaments are changing. They're noticing that their response to stress is changing. They're noticing more clarity in their thinking. They're noticing that the decision making is more fluent. Because they have a more orderly functioning brain. And what this means for us is that the very subconsciously programmed emotional thinking and habits that we have that causes us to self-sabotage our lives, that we have maybe have trying to change but found it difficult, we now find a platform where it's easy to engage the change. This is where now transformation becomes possible. And there's never been anything that I've come across that is so simple to use and apply and work with that can help people to not just improve their physical well-being, but to improve their entire lives. And this is what Super Patch is all about. So just let me run through some of the patches with you. This is what you saw Jay demonstrated with the EEG. And this could also be tested in real time with dynamic and lateral balance. If you do a strength and balance test with this, before and after, you apply the patch, you will see within seconds people's strength, their grip strength, their balance, their mobility, and their stability, it changes within a matter of seconds. That's how effective the Liberty patch is. For those who have issues in sleeping or insomnia, this helps to regulate the pathways of the brain that deals with the circadian rhythms of sleep, and it brings it into synchronization, and you sleep. You get that REM sleep where the body repairs and rejuvenates itself. This here is, I think, is an invaluable patch. It's called Peace. This is for dealing with stress, which all of us, our autonomic nervous system, which is what's running everything inside our bodies, that is always leaning to the sympathetic nervous side, which it is always in high gear, it's always rev, because stress and fears and negative emotions always keeps it. That's why when we do EEGs on the brain, most people's brains and their minds are always erratic. It's unstable. It's because our autonomic nervous system is always revved up because of the thoughts and emotions that we're constantly running through. And by the way, it doesn't have to be conscious. It's happening subconsciously, so it's always in high rev. Peace Patch brings that calm shifts it to a parasympathetic function, and it brings that calm and that emotional resilience. Consistent use over time, and the brain begins to rewire to this balance, it becomes life-changing. So this is also another invaluable patch. It's called Defend. This is going to upregulate the immune system in ways that I have not worked with anything that enhances immune function as good as this and as fast as how this does. Enhances blood flow, faster recovery. This is definitely a daily must. Um, freedom, freedom from pain. It works well. And the thing is, the more balanced your system is regulated, when you use this freedom, the more immediate your pain is going to go away. For those who are into athletics, into performance, into gym and consistent workouts, this is absolutely a wonderful patch. I really enjoy this when I go into the gym. This really makes my workout not just a joy, but the intensity and what I can do. You will definitely feel the difference in your strength and your power when you use this, whether it is in the gym or whether you're an athlete. This is what gives you the extra edge. I have also come to enjoy this. You do not need to have cognitive issues, or you do not need to have issues with attention and focus and concentration to use this. I suggest to people that this should become a patch that people should use regularly. Yes, it will enhance your concentration, your focus, your attention, your memory, etc. But the consistent use of it daily as part of your daily accessories, it helps to rewire the centers of your brain that deals with these cognitive matters, and it rewires to that, and we become sharper and clearer over consistent use. So not to think of these patches as something that you only use because you have an issue. It is going to help to streamline and rewire things well. For those wanting to improve have a more healthy weight and trying to get off those extra pounds, you want to burn more calories more effectively, this helps to burn 25% more calories at a resting metabolic rate. So more efficient energy consumption in your body, which is also good. For us men, as we get older, we tend to become, our masculine function tends to decline. You want to reclaim that virility for your masculine function. The Rocket is an excellent patch. Lumi, I also think this is something that pretty much everybody should use, not just because you want healthier skin and more of a glowing complexion, but because it also helps with the gut lining as well, which the majority of people as we get older, we all have perforations in our gut lining. We may not be aware of it, and it also lends to how we might be dealing with our nutrition and so on. So this is also a very good patch. Kick It is for people who are struggling to overcome bad habits and conquering cravings. Now, because this is dealing with the centers of your brain that deals with emotions, because addictions are all emotionally encoded subconsciously and regulated by the brain, because this regulates those emotional centers. Taking Kick It is not only going to help you to overcome these bad habits, but taking it over time also helps you to manage your emotional response to other issues, not just overcoming. It brings a sense of well-being with consistent use over time, particularly if you're using a couple of the other patches with it. Joy, I also think, is an invaluable patch. If you are feeling a low mood and you're going through a period of depression, you're feeling depressed, joy is something that's going to lift you out of that mood. But also, I always want to say for all of these patches, you don't need to be feeling low. You don't need to be feeling depressed to take this. You could get up and you could be feeling great, but just by wearing this joy, the centers of your brain, that it is synchronizing and streamlining, and the activity from mind to body synchronization. Yes, it helps you with your optimistic and more positive outlook and mood, but the rewiring of what it's doing for your brain, this is what taps into the centers of your brain that deals with our spiritual well-being. Because using EEG and using MEG equipment, you can, when we are in more transcendent and these spiritually elevated states, They're all measurable, and we can see the centers of the brain that are affected. Joy begins to impact on those centers. So these are things that it's beyond having a problem. The latest patch that Super Patch just brought out is Boost. When you take Boost, you don't need to be taking artificial stuff to get your energy. You don't need toxic stuff and toxic drinks to get your energy. This is energy on demand as you need it. Excellent patch. So, and there are ways that you can synchronize the power of the super patches when you use them in combination, because a brain that is in sync is a body in balance. And a brain, when the brain's rhythm is flow in harmony, the body system resonate in accord. And that has far-reaching implications for natural healing, for vitality, resilience against disease, mental clarity, just how we function better overall. So the patches are very simple to use. The instructions are on the patches. Each patch lasts for 24 hours. You can place them pretty much anywhere on your body, from under your feet all the way up. The patches are supported with a medical advisory board. These are very accomplished doctors, all have published papers, and they work with the research and development team in terms of real world application out in the real world, how they actually fit into society and the impact that they're having. So much of the global population today is seeking help for mind-body imbalances, even though they may not perceive it as that. And so we all of us are dealing with it, and we all need these patches. Billions of people all over the world spending billions of dollars to deal with their mind-body imbalances. So I want to invite you, if you're here on the call for the first time and you're investigating, you're invited by someone, one of the associates that represent these patches, like myself. If you have not been patched, then you should feel the difference by using super patches, and you want to use it over a period of time, because these are advanced solutions to enhance well-being that is tailored by you for you. And that's important. You cannot get more biospecific than that. Your own body, when it becomes regulated and balanced, it tailors the response that your body needs to optimize its own function physically and mentally. Our Facebook group has thousands of testimonies of how it's changing people's lives all over the world. You can try it risk-free. Speak to the person who invited you on the call. There are options that you have on how you can do that. So you can be a consumer and just use it for your own life and well-being. The other option is that you can become an owner of a super patch business, and so you can be both a consumer and owner, and you can be able to now impact lives. It's a very meaningful, rewarding, and lucrative business. It's globally scalable, and it's an exclusive model. I'm not going to talk about this tonight. This is something that I will, myself and my upline leader is going to talk about this on Monday evening at 7:30 to 8:30 for those in the Caribbean regions, 6:30 to 7:30 here in North America, where we're going to talk about the value of this and what it affords us, because this is something that's very unique. Now, when it comes to economics and financial freedom and your potential to put yourself in a financial security down the road, for those of you who may think that this is for you, or you may be interested in looking at this, I invite you to take a look and do that on Monday, and so you can make an informed decision of this is something that's for you. Outside of that, you may just be a consumer where you can just purchase them online through your associate, because they're not available on the online platforms. You have to get them through an official Super Patch associate. And so that's the presentation for this evening. So if you want to bring yourself into a position, the focus is we're going to just naturally default to physical health. When we say health, our minds are going to default to our bodies, because that's how we've been conditioned to think about health, that health is about your body. Health is not about your body, health is about you. And you are not just a physical being. You are a spiritual being expressing its life through a physical body in this three-dimensional reality. And when it's all working in harmony together, we don't just feel better, think better, and live better, but it's beyond our imagination when we really begin to work with it. And so that's what I want to invite you to consider. I want to invite you to take charge of your life and up-level your living in ways that was not as easily accessible before. And so you can speak to the person that might have invited you on if you have any questions about anything. But on Monday evening, we're also going to be opening it for it's going to be an interactive session on Monday where you can ask questions regarding the technology, or you could also ask questions regarding the commercial side of it. So I really want to thank all of you for taking your time, for coming on, being here with us tonight, giving me the opportunity to share this concept and this idea with you. And I hope that you would have heard something tonight that you could take, think about it, and that you could now up-level your own living and make a difference in your life. So may God bless each and every one of you. Thank you very much for coming on the call. Good night.